Hi everyone, this is Ms. Seed. Welcome to virtual science class for today. Today we're going to be looking at reproduction in plants and animals on STEMScopes, and we're going to be doing Explore 1 activity about which behavior has more success. In this activity, you guys are going to be investigating the question of whether spawning behavior of fish affects their reproduction success. We're going to test two different types of spawning behavior and see which has better success in reproduction. We're going to be using a model to collect data about the spawning behavior in fish and determine how probable successful reproduction is in both scenarios. You guys will conclude the lesson by constructing a scientific explanation to describe the model's most successful spawning behavior, and you'll support your claim with evidence and reasoning. So in the introduction to this lab, we're going to see a little introduction statement. So let's go through that and we'll draw a little picture of what they're saying here. So there are many aquatic animals that use spawning behavior for reproduction. Spawn is the eggs and sperm that are released into the water by aquatic animals. So a good way to picture this is that spawning is basically when we have a male fish and a female fish, and they are both releasing sperm, and the females are releasing eggs into the water. So this consists of the eggs being released and the sperms being released into the water at the same time. So some of the eggs will become fertilized and some will not. So when they touch, the eggs will be fertilized. Some aquatic animals spawn all at the same time, while others spawn over time. So you'll have some fish that will spawn over maybe a 5-day period. And then you'll have some that will spawn all at once. There are many cues that tell fish when to spawn. So some of these cues for when fish will spawn include water temperature, the moon phases, and chemical signals in the water. Okay, now to the procedure for this experiment. For this experiment, we'll need maybe a blue piece of paper to simulate a lake. We'll need 50 paper clips. And what we're going to do for part 1 is we're going to model fish spawning over 5 different nights. And we're going to see in our data table that we are going to, for our part 1, have trial 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And those are going to simulate the 5 different nights that the fish are going to spawn. So we're going to start out by scattering 5 paper clips into the lake. And this is going to model the 5 eggs. One by one, we're going to toss another 5 paper clips into this box top. So 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we have 1 pair touching, and we're going to record this data for the number of paper clips that touch another paper clip in our data table. So in trial 1, we had 1 successful reproduction. We're going to do this again for a second night. So we're going to leave our 5 eggs there to simulate the 5 eggs in the lake. And we're going to drop our 5 sperm into the lake. Okay, this time we have one paperclip pair touching, so that is, again, simulating an egg and a sperm successfully fertilizing an egg. And so for trial 2, we're going to have one again. So we're going to do our third night, simulate our third night of reproduction and spawning, since this is part 1. So we have our 5 eggs. Those are our 5 eggs, and then we have our 5 sperm. This time we have 2 paperclip pairs touching. So for trial 3, night 3, we have 2. And we'll do this again for night 4. Our 5 eggs. And then our 5 sperm. Okay, this time we have 1, 2, 3 paperclip pairs touching. So for night 4, trial 4, we have 3 paperclip pairs touching. So we'll go on to our last night of spawning, night 5. So you can imagine these fish, these female fish, putting their eggs out in the lake, and the male fish coming by, 5 male fish coming by and letting sperm out to see if they will spawn. Okay, so this time we have 1 paperclip pair touching. So for trial 5, we have 1 paperclip pair touching. So to get our total fertilization, we're going to add them all up. So 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 total fertilizations. And to get our probability of success, what we're going to do is we're going to take the number of fertilizations, we're going to divide it by the total possible events, which was 25, because each night we had 5 possible, and so if we had 5 possible each night, then in total we would have 25 possible overall, and so we would do 8 divided by 25. So 8 divided by 25 is 0.32, and to get a percent of success, we would multiply that by 100% to convert it to a percent, in which case we would get 32%. And that would be our probability of success for trial 1. Next, we're going to move on to trial 2, which will be a single event spawn. So this will be where the case where fish or aquatic animals may spawn all at the same time. So all the females and all the males will go into the lake and spawn, put all their eggs out and all their sperm out, and see which sperm will touch the eggs to fertilize them. So to do this, we're going to place 25 paperclips inside our lake. So 25 paperclips, which will simulate the 25 females putting their eggs into the lake. So at this point we have our 25 paperclips, which are representing the 25 eggs that are in the lake from the female fish that have spawned. Next, we're going to put 25 paperclips which will simulate the male fish who have dropped their sperm into the lake, and we'll see how many of them are touching at the end. All right, so at this point we have our 25 sperm and 25 egg dropped into the lake, and we're going to count and see how many of them are touching to get the total fertilization. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have 12 different pairs that are touching. So when we collect our data for part 2, for the single event spawn, since it's only one night that they're doing it, we're going to put our total amount just in trial 1, and they've X'd out the other days because we're not doing it for 5 days like the other types of species that spawn over 5 nights. So our total fertilization is 12. And our probability of success is going to be, we're going to use the same process that we did for the previous one. So we're taking the total number of fertilizations, which is 12. We're dividing by the total possible fertilizations, which is 25. And we're doing 12 divided by 25. So 12 divided by 25 is 0.48. So to multiply, or to convert that to a percentage, we multiply that by 100%, and we get 48%. And that's our probability of success for part 2, which is the single event spawn. Now, before even flipping to, or going to the experiment analysis questions at the end, I want you to take a look at your data table, and I want you to look and see, just from your own common sense, which of these two types of spawning do you think are more successful? Because remember, the question we are investigating with this activity is, how does spawning behavior of fish affect their reproduction success? And so when we've calculated the probability of success, that's actually telling us how successful that reproduction type is. And so the higher the success rate, so the higher the percentage, the closer to 100% it is, the more successful it is. So you can draw some conclusions based on your data in the analysis questions. I also want you to use your data from the activity that we collected, you know, the 8 and 12 total fertilizations in each part, and I want you to use that in your explanations for your answers. So you want to cite your evidence, and this is your evidence because we did this experiment to model these two different types of reproduction in aquatic animals. So after we've finished our data collection, we're going to go to our analysis questions. So questions 1 through 3 will have you analyze your data from the experiment. Those you're just going to use your common sense and your scientific reasoning from the activity we did to explain your answers in full sentences using correct capitalization, punctuation, and spelling. Then we're going to get to question 4. Once we get to question 4, I sort of want to guide you through how we're going to do this. So it says, look at your data again. Subtract 1/5 of the fertilizations from each trial due to predators such as turtles or other fish. How does your probability of success change for each scenario? So for this, we're going to set up 2 separate parts to represent the 2 separate parts of our experiment. We have part 1, and that is 5 nights of spawning. And for this, we're going to represent the number of fertilizations with the predators. So we have the fertilizations from each child due to predators, and we're going to subtract 1/5 from that. So to get that, we're going to have 8, which is our total number of fertilizations. We're going to subtract 8 times 1/5, and that's going to give us the total number of fertilizations with the predators. So we'll call that number of fertilizations with predators. And so when we do 8 times 1/5, we're going to get 8 minus 1.6. So 8 minus 1.6 equals the number of fertilizations with the predators, because we've lost 1.6 of our successfully fertilized eggs because the fish and the turtles, the other fish and the turtles ate them. And so we are left with 6.4 fertilizations left. We're going to divide that by 25, which will be the total possible fertilizations, and we get 0.256. And to convert that to percentage, we multiply it by 100%, and we end up getting 25.6%. And that's for part 1. And so that, if we take a look at the other side of our data, that's down from 32%. Okay, since it's down from 32%, we can say it's about minus 7% due to predators. Okay, so the predators take away about 7% of our successful fertilizations. Now let's compare that to part 2. So we have part 2 over here. And part 2 is going to be where we have single night spawning. And that's where we put the 25 eggs in there, and then the 25 sperm all at one time. And so for this one, we had 12 successful fertilizations. And we're going to subtract 1/5 of them, so 12 times 1/5, and that's going to represent the number of fertilizations with the predators. Okay, so we're going to do 12 minus 12 times 1/5. 12 times 1/5, when I put it in my calculator, is 2.4. Some of you are probably good enough to do that without putting it into a calculator, which is awesome. And so 12 minus 2.4 is 9.6. And so 9.6 is the number of fertilizations we have remaining after 2.4 of them got eaten by turtles and other fish. So we divide that by 25, which is the total number of fertilizations possible, and we get 0.384. And to convert that to a percentage, we multiply it by 100%. And then we get 38.4. So you can see when we multiply the decimal by 100%, all we do is take the decimal point and we move it over 2 spots. The same thing over here. We take 0.256, we multiply it by 100%, which means that we just move the decimal over 2 to the right. And so when we compare the percentage of reproductive success in part 2, when the turtles and other fish have eaten some of the eggs and sperm, what we're left with is a comparison to our previous amount, which was 48%. So this is down from 48%. So in total, that's a drop of about 10%. So when predators are involved, the reproductive success rate drops, and you can prove that by calculating it. So what you're going to do for questions 5 through 7 You're going to use some of your reasoning from question 4 and your activity to answer those questions. And after that, you'll have a CER to answer. And with that, you will finish up the activity. Make sure that in your CER you cite the calculations and data that we came up with for question 4 when we have predators, and also the probability of success that we originally calculated before we had any predators. And once you finish that, you want to make sure that you save your work frequently in STEMScopes and then turn it in with the green button on STEMScopes, and then I'll be able to see it. All right, good luck. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing your work.